Hello everyone. My name is Darshil and I'm a freelance data engineer and a YouTuber. Anyone ever watched my content online? If you are into data engineering, you might have seen me. And today we will be discussing about one of the most promising industry right now, that is data engineering. We will cover everything from start to end. We will go about how the data is generated, what are the different steps in between, and then we will understand about one of the projects that we can design to understand the entire process, okay? So this is the agenda of the today. I know you guys are still hungry, and again, I woke up at the 6 a.m. also. But bear with me, this is going to be one of the most important session, okay, in your tech career. So try to pay the attention and try to understand what I'm saying here. So first, we will understand about the basics of data engineering. So the folks who are new to this field, first we'll lay out the different components, what are the different components we need to focus on, and then we'll go forward. So we'll start with the basics of data engineering, understand the data lifecycle, data processing. Then we will look one example, how to build a complete data engineering project on Google Cloud. So introduction to data engineering and where it fits, okay? So let's take an example of any application you use on day-to-day basis. So let's take an example of Instagram. From the time you click onto Instagram or just open your app, all of your data is collected. So the building of application and storing the part is generally done by the software engineer. So what they do is just write code and build the software. So we have the front end and back end. After that, once the data is generated and once the data is put onto the database, what do? We want to make sure we extract the right insights from the data so that we can give the user better recommendations, try to improve the business overall. So that is the whole idea behind this. So we have the application. In between, once we have our, am I audible? Yeah. In between, once we have our data placed onto the database, we mainly build a data pipeline, which is kind of like having the data from the application and relational database and putting it on somewhere on the data warehouse so that we can analyze and business can take decisions. And at the end, we have the machine learning engineers, business analysts, data analysts, who can run queries, try to understand what is happening inside the business and take decisions based on that. So data engineering generally fits between, we have the data science, machine learning, and we have the application. So the overall understanding of data engineering is between creating the pipeline from the relational database to the data warehouse. Now, let's deep dive into the data engineering process. So we understood from the top level where the data engineering fits. But now we want to understand what this data engineering comprises of, okay? So we have different components. First is the data generation. Now data is generated from the various sources. We already know that. Like data comes from the sensors, web analytics, users interact with the different applications, so data is generated. Some users actually give the manual feedback, so that is the one source of data. We have people uploading images, audio, so this is the source of data. Then we have the actual data engineering lifecycle, which comprises of the basically 4 components. We have the data ingestion, so we need to ingest data and build a mechanism to ingest data properly. Then we need to write some transformation job because data is coming from the multiple sources. So we need to make sure all of these data are put into the proper structure form so that the data scientist or machine learning engineers can actually build a model on top of it. So the cleaning of the data is been done in this phase. And then the serving part. So serving part is basically you give the data to the users. It can be business analysts, data scientists, all of the others. So these are the 3 important components of data engineering lifecycle. And then underlying we have the storage. So in each and every stage, we need to store our data. So let's say if we extract data from application, RDBMS, or some APIs, right? We need to store the raw data and then prepare it for the transformation. Once we transform our data, we'll again store it onto the storage, and then we'll put it forward for the analysis part. So this is what the entire lifecycle looks like. And again, we have the undercurrents because this is not only about just copy pasting data from one source to the target location. We need to make sure, first of all, we have the security of the data because any company who tries to move onto the cloud platform, the first concern is, mera data secure hoga ki nahi? Okay, so we need to make sure all of the data is secure over here. Then data management, so we need to make sure all of the documentation of the data governance is done properly. Then we have the data ops, kind of like the DevOps, but on the side of the data product lifecycle. So you need to make sure all of these pipelines are regulated properly and delivered on time. Then we have the data architecture, orchestration. We already talked about the orchestration using the prefect by Abhishek. And then we have the software engineering. So data engineering is not just about getting the data and putting it on the target location. You need to consider a lot of different use cases while designing the data pipeline. So this is what the data generation means. We have like web application, RDBMS data is coming. Then we have the basic data storage. So applications, users interact with the application and data gets stored. After that, we have multiple DBMS systems such as PostgreSQL, MySQL. So these are generally called as a transactional database where we store the transaction related values. So if you go to the Amazon website, right? So when you order any product, all of those information are stored on this relational database only. And then we have the two systems, right? We talked about the transactional system, which is generally used for faster read, write. We can say as the CUR operation, create, read, update, delete. So whenever you want to do all of these operations, you use OLTP. After that, we have OLAP. So let's say if you want to answer some of the questions such as, what was the last 5 years of the revenue of the company? You cannot do that using the OLTP system. We discussed this in the AlloDB session, right? These database systems are not designed for that. If you want to do that, you need to use something called as columnar data system, which is considered as a data warehouse. These days, we have new databases coming in the market that supports both of the things, but traditionally, we have these two systems. So what we do is basically take data from the relational database and put that data by transforming it onto the target location. So now to process data, we have two things. One is the batch processing. So in the batch processing, we take the large bunch of data and process it once a day, twice a day, depending on the business requirement. And second is our real-time streaming. So we use different applications on daily basis, such as Uber, Google Maps, or even Instagram, right? All of those things you are getting in the real-time basis. So whatever you do, you directly get the output at the end. So we have these two systems, and this is what we actually do, right? We have the data coming from one source, and we just try to put that data onto some kind of target location. Now this is what the actual big data landscape looks like, okay? All of these are tools to build all of these data pipelines, machine learning models, and data scientists they use. What we really need to do, we just need to pick the right tools and build our final project to solve a particular business problem. So let's say if we want to do this on GCP level, we have multiple services available. For let's say data ingestion, we have App Engine and Cloud PubSub. We will discuss about these services in a little bit. But after that, we have the data processing service, we have the Dataflow and Dataproc. After that, we have the storage services, Cloud SQL, Cloud Storage, and all of the other things. And then same for the data warehousing and the visualization. So all of the things that we talked about, like data ingestion, transformation, and the loading part, needs to be done by these different tools. So what do we really do? We just pick different tools, and we try to connect it together to build our final project. So these are the basics of the service. So PubSub is generally considered as a messaging service. So if you have data coming from one source, you can add the PubSub in between, and you can receive the data on the other end. Then we have the Dataflow, generally used for designing batch and real-time streaming pipeline. Dataproc, so if you know about the Hadoop and the MapReduce, if you want to run the large-scale Spark jobs, you can use that. Then we have the storage, generally used as the object storage. So if you want to store any file, and then we have the BigQuery and the Looker for visualization. So let's just discuss how to design the pipeline in GCP. Let's say if you want to do that. So we all know this guy, right? Who is this? Harshad Mehta. So we already watched the Scam movie or the Scam web series, and he comes to in 2023 and tells us that I need to design a data pipeline because I understood that AI revolution is happening. And I need to make sure that I use this data infrastructure and try to gain as much as profit by gaining more data and like extracting the insights. So this is what he is targeting, and he wants to generate the new scam using the new technology. So this is the kind of architecture we present. Okay, now pay attention. All of the tools that we talked about, what we are just doing is we are connecting it together to build our final project. So we have two pipelines over here. One is the streaming pipeline, which will give us data in the real-time basis. And then we have the batch pipeline. So batch pipeline will give us the data in some different time intervals. So if we have some news data coming, so that can be considered as a batch pipeline. What we really want to do is we want to build a proper data infrastructure so that we can analyze data in real time, but also have the batch pipeline. So at the end, we can integrate it with the AI models to gain more insights and try to take better decisions. So the first step over here is basically we will integrate with some API, and it will push the data onto our Cloud PubSub, which is the messaging service, which is used to integrate these two services with the Cloudflow. Cloudflow is generally used for the data processing. So if you want to write some script and transform some data based on the frequency, you can use Cloudflow. And after that, you can store your data onto BigQuery, and you can visualize it. Second is our batch pipeline. So what we really do, we get all of the data and put those data onto one single storage location. So this is considered as the raw storage. After that, we have something called as a data proc. We use this to write our transformation job on the large scale. So if we have like billions of rows, we can use Dataproc to process it in few minutes. And after that, we again store our data onto the Dataflow and pass it for the machine learning models and the prediction model. And we can also pass it to the BigQuery and build dashboards. So this is all about just understanding different components. But if you want to understand how these things are done practically, let's look at this step by step and how it looks. Okay. The first step is creating pub/sub topic. So whenever you create any topic, it will have two components. One is the publisher who actually publishes data onto the topic, and then there will be multiple subscribers. So in this case, the publisher will be, let's say, a BSC APIs, right? They will try to publish all of the data they have captured onto the topic. And on the subscriber end, we can have the developer who will try to capture all of the data in the real time. After that, so this is what basically publishing message looks like. We are basically importing some packages, connecting it with the pub/sub APIs, and passing the message as a JSON format. Once we have the data, then we will extract that data and write the transformation code on our Dataflow. So we will create some job. This is pretty simple. You can just write the name of the job, select the template, and it will generate something like this. You will get all of the code directly generated by the Dataflow. All you have to do, you just have to write a transformation function on top, and you can store your data onto BigQuery or cloud storage, depending on the requirement. After that, so this is on the top part, which is basically getting data in from the stream, then processing it using the Dataflow and storing it on the BigQuery. Second part is creating the batch pipeline. Now, batch pipeline, what we are doing is, we are storing all of those things onto cloud storage bucket. So steps are pretty simple. You go on, you create the bucket, and bucket will be created. After that, what we do, we create the two folders. One to store our raw data and one to store our processed data. So whenever any data comes from the different sources, we just put it on the raw data and prepare it for the transformation. After that, we go to the Dataproc, we write our code onto the Spark and try to transform that raw data and put that data onto the transform location. So this is how the actual data engineering pipeline works in the backend. You take data, you put that data onto the proper location, and then you try to transform it based on your requirement. And then we can put our data onto, let's say, BigQuery and write some SQL queries. So let's say I write select query, and this will give me some data. I can also write some analysis query on top of it, such as getting the data based on like different stock names and getting the average price of it. And this is what the entire pipeline comprises of. And once we have our data properly stored onto the BigQuery, we can pass that data to the data scientists, machine learning engineers. They can utilize this data and then maybe build the machine learning models, prediction algorithms, and all of the other things. And at the end, businesses can build a dashboard on top of it and try to understand more about this data. So this was all about the entire data engineering pipeline. Just gave you the entire story of different components of it. I hope you found this helpful, and if you have questions, just let me know. Okay.